Greetings ladies and gents, welcome back to the Craft Hammer. I'm your host Stefan, and in today's video we're going to be doing an Imperial Agents Army Showcase. For some of you, you might have seen our Codex review that we did a video or two ago, and at the end I did mention that I was planning to film the Army Showcase straight away so that it would be the next video up. Obviously that was not the case because somehow I managed to film my takeaway order instead of actually filming when I was looking at the models. So unfortunately all that footage was pretty much non-existent and there was no way for me to make the video for the Army Showcase. So today we're going to make sure that we are going to bring out all the models, focus on them, make sure that I have actual footage, and then we'll go through how I collected them and what exactly I plan to do with them in the future. As a quick summary, I did in fact start collecting this about 2.5 years ago, before we even had any sort of boxes that were dedicated to the Imperial Agents, and I was just picking up random metal models and some plastic ones and resin ones just so that I could make a Inquisition attachment, so that for my Space Marines I could have a thematic board with them on it, and in the corner there'll be an inquisitorial retinue following them around. It was more intended to be its own lore piece that was attached to my Space Marines and wasn't intended to be an actual force. But now that over the past while we've gotten releases of boxes of units such as the Navy Breachers, the Arbites, and of course now with the Codex, which we did a review, it has kind of grown into its own small retinue force. Nothing too major, as you might know from our review. It's not really something that works well with a standalone army unless you intend to invest quite a bit of money to get a number of models and also probably attach Grey Knights. So that's not what we're going to be doing with this army. For now it's just collecting the models that I kind of really want and like to make it thematic, and further down the line, if the Imperial Agents get any improvements or if Grey Knights get a refresh, we might think about expanding the collection. So for now, let's not ramble too much. We did of course lose all that footage, so let's just get into it, make sure that it's recording, and I'll show what we currently have in the collection and what they will be standing in as rules wise, since some of them don't particularly fit an exact criteria, so they're going to be proxied in for certain things. And let me set up and we'll go through each of the models. And we're back folks, and as you can see we have a few models currently on display. Not really visible, but what I will try and do is bring two models to the front of the camera so that we can see the details a bit more closer and we're not taking too long, as there's a few things I kind of want to show off. So what you're currently seeing is the Imperial Navy Breachers, and I do have about 20 of these guys all painted up nicely in this orange color, iron armor, and of course a bit of blue accents. And these make up the bulk of my I guess the grunts that are on the table. One of the big things that you'll notice is that even my Space Marines, they are themed to be fighting on a ship of some kind, so that's why a lot of these models have the I believe Sector Mechanicus bases to make them look like they are fighting on ship-to-ship combat. And that's kind of why I got 20 of the Navy Breachers, just because they were more thematic to what I had in mind. And then I of course got I believe these were the Star Strikers when they came out in a box. I'll pull up the Rogue Trader that also came with them so that you can see what they look like. So far most of these models will be, well, they have their own index pages that they can actually use in the Codex, so they don't need to be subbed in for anything specific. So these ones do have rules that I can actually use them, and they're very nice. I liked the way I managed to paint them. They came out pretty nice, and the little medic with their kind of off-white shawl really worked out nicely. Now, for those of you who might remember, there was an an Inquisitorial henchman squad that came out in a specific box that also, I believe, included Scions and Sisters of Silence. So I did manage to paint the Scions for this project. The Sisters are still unbuilt, unfortunately, so they will not be making an appearance, even though I have a Custodes force where I could technically build them and add them to that army. I did in fact want to keep them as part of the Inquisitorial force that I have instead of being part of the Custodes. I do like how the Scions came out. I used a Grey Knight steel for their armor, and then I washed it with blue, so that's why we get this wonderful effect for them. Continuing on from the Inquisitorial henchman box, we're going to start looking at some of the models. Now, this is the new scribe that they have from that box, and this is a very old metal version, so I wanted to also get this one just to have lying about and, you know, being part of the scene overall. I think it adds a lot of character to the force to have these guys, even though they might not be that great when it comes to actual rules. They do look very thematic. And then we have the rest of the squad here. They turned out pretty nicely. Let's bring out the servitor. He looks great. I wish that they made more servitor models so that people could get rid of some of the old metal ones that are falling apart and have some really nice new ones. Now, I also include the navigator here just as there's no real other area to put him in thematic wise, so that's why he's being shown off with this squad. Now, the navigator does have their own rule set, and I will be playing it as a navigator, but there will be a few models coming up that are kind of old models and they don't really have a specific location, so they will become their own Inquisitorial henchman squad, and that's the rules that they'll be using. Two of those models will in fact be a Vestroyan Sergeant, I believe. This was the old metal Sergeant model, and then on the left here, I believe this is a very old Arbites model from a long time ago, and these will become Inquisitorial henchmen of their own. And I was quite happy with how the yellow for this model turned out. I'm kind of thinking that when I do eventually start my Imperial Guard army, I think I'm going to use the yellow for the coats and the blue for the legs here, so I did like how this turned out to be. On a similar vein as to before with the Inquisitorial henchman box, which came with Sisters of Silence, I do believe this is part of Valerian and Alea, I think her name is. She will be actually joining my Inquisition and not my Custodes force, just because I think she really suits the theme that I'm going with here. Now, two models that I believe only have rules in the Sisters of Battle, maybe they still have some, are the old Crusader models, which these ones I believe are resin. I don't know if they're actually fine cast anymore, but they did come in resin blisters. They might not have the best rules, nor maybe I don't even know if I can take them as part of the Imperial Agents using those rules, but in reality they're just here because they look really thematic, really cool, and they will probably become Inquisitorial henchmen for my Inquisitor and little bodyguards for them. Now, continuing on with the old models that will need to be proxied as the Inquisitorial henchmen, we do have these two, which I believe the one on the left was an old Dialogus, and then I'm not entirely sure what the one on the right was, and I also think that I see a tiny bit of chipping of paint at the very top right there. That's one of the issues when it comes to metal models. What I normally try to do is varnish, well, I prime and then I varnish on top of the prime, then I paint and then I varnish again, just so that it has as much protection as possible from the chipping. But of course, if you do drop it the wrong way, it still could chip. And then I think you can still get the one on the left. This is the missionary, and then one on the right is, I think, is an actual inquisitorial model from a long time ago, but I just don't particularly know which one it is. So all those four, they're going to become some sort of henchman squad. Not together, I'll probably mix it up with the other ones, but that's how I will probably run them. And I do have another inquisitorial henchman squad currently in painting, so they'll be growing even more. And of course, we can't forget the preachers. I believe the one on the left has his own rules at the moment, while the one on the right is Uriah Jacobs. Quite a famous old model. He looks like a hobo with a shotgun, so definitely nice and thematic to the overall force. Now, when the henchman squad first came out, I do believe that they were able to take a psyker as part of the squad, and most importantly, a demon host could be attached to it. So the one on the left is a Necromunda bundle, which I thought would look great as a demon host, hence why I got it to be attached to the actual henchman squad. But unfortunately, for some reason, those rules were removed recently, so you can't actually have a demon host anymore, and I'm assuming that's because the model has gone from the shop, so you can no longer buy it, and they don't want to have rules for models that you can't buy. We also have 2 assassins to go with this force. I believe I played with the Eversor in a recent game, and I think it was in the Custodes one, so you could probably check out my review of him and how he did, while I haven't played with the other one, so no experience there. But it's one of those things that no inquisitorial force is really complete if they don't have an assassin here or there. Well, things were getting a tiny bit squished there, so I had to readjust things just to make a tiny bit more space. We only have a few models left, and we just wanted to readjust there. So here are some of my favorite models coming in. We do have a few sisters model. I believe this is some sort of banner. I can't remember the name, but I think there is currently an equivalent in the sisters rule. And the one on the left is a hospitaller, so it's the medic that they have, and this is the old metal version. So those won't really have rules that could match within the inquisitorial force. They will need to be proxied for other things, as I can't have every single unit from the Sisters of Battle in the Imperial Agents. Only a few things are allowed. So some of these, for example, will most likely be used as inquisitorial henchmen, and for the one on the right, for example, there's more likely a chance that she will be an inquisitor for a friendly game. And the next two as well. These two are some of my favorite ones. I think the baby blue worked out really nicely. And then the yellow turned up really well as well. So more inquisitors that will be proxied in for my force. And speaking of inquisitors, we do have some of those. I believe this was a made to order not that long ago, and I just needed an inquisitor for my force. I do have quite a number of models that are currently in my backlog that need to be built and painted, and I do have an older metal one, which I believe had a crossbow. That will eventually get built and painted, and maybe further down the line we'll have some sort of update that will go along with this video, and we can see how the collection grows. But until then, I can't remember the specific name. I think this is Inquisitor Draxus. Hopefully I'm naming it right. I don't really have it here on my let me check somewhere. Maybe you'll find it in the book. I just did a small little head swap with the Navy Breacher's head just because I wasn't really a fan of a bald head, and I thought the hair would look much nicer. And then the last Inquisitor and last model that I currently have to show is this Inquisitor. I know that this one also had a specific name, and it's an old metal Inquisitor. I'm just not entirely sure which one it is, but he will be the last Inquisitor to show off today. So I hope you enjoyed looking at this army showcase. Let me know if you have any of the models here and what you think of the current collection. This is where this collection will remain. I'm quite proud of how it turned out. It really looks well together. I managed to get most of them on the Sector Mechanicus bases. Of course, some of them, especially some of the metal ones, do require a bit of pinning and things such as this Inquisitor. I thought it made sense to have a bit of a rise where I can put some skulls to show that. I think this one is supposed to be an Hereticus Inquisitor, so that's why there's a lot of human skulls, while this one has a lot of alien skulls around. But for now, I think this is where I will leave it. Drop your comments down below what you thought about the models and what else you think I should add. I know there's a few metal models that are still evading me and I'd like to get my hands on. Maybe add one or two more assassins, and I'm looking at the Horus Heresy ones. They kind of look interesting, and I do have plans to eventually get one or two of the Necromunda models to have as Inquisitors, so that will be further down the line. But for now, drop a comment, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I guess until next time, take care folks.